Secretary Granholm, thank you so much for meeting us again, and thank you for doing this interview. It's been a year since Russia launched a full-scale war, and it's been almost 4 months, or at least 4 months, then Russia started this campaign of brutal attacks on Ukraine's energy sector. How do you assess the current situation with Ukraine's energy grid?
Well, I do know that the President Zelensky, has really expressed a desire to have a different grid, a grid that is distributed, that has clean energy, but also that isn't so centralized so that it becomes a target. And that is very encouraging. That's something we very much want to work with Ukraine on, and we have labs that are already, our national labs are already preparing strategies to be able to get to that. Ultimately, you want to basically war-proof an electric grid. It's what we have been doing is we've been scanning for high voltage equipment that would be compatible with Ukraine's electric grid. It's a Soviet-era grid, and so therefore it's difficult. Our transformers, for example, aren't compatible. So we're canvassing around the world and all of our utilities to see what equipment can we send. So we are in the process now of sending the third tranche of equipment to Ukraine so that they can replace what has been damaged. But ultimately, long term, what we need to do is to fulfill the President's goals to get a distributed electric grid so that if one section is damaged, it doesn't bring down a whole region.
And you already mentioned the packages that the United States is providing. We know that in the end of 2022, the United States provided the first tranche of $53 million. Then in January, Secretary Blinken announced a $125 million package. Can you talk a little bit more about the impact that this assistance made on recovery efforts? And should we expect more such of assistance? You talked about the third tranche.
There will be a third tranche that's sent at the beginning of March. And, you know, it's helped certainly. What's amazed us is how quickly the Ukrainians have been able to incorporate what we're sending so that they can get things up and running again. It is really breathtaking, the kind of resilience and quick turnaround that has happened with those who are working on the grid. And we will continue to help in any way we can. I know the Europeans are doing the same thing, sending, you know, lots of equipment, planes of equipment, and you know, using train to get it in, et cetera. All that kind of stuff is happening. But ultimately, you know, the Russians have a very strategic goal, which is to destroy, and destroying from the electricity sector, which hurts people. And this is why our efforts to help Ukraine win this war are so important. Not just ours, but the 50-nation coalition that we're leading to help Ukraine win this war is so important.
You mentioned that Russia's goal is to destroy energy grid, and as some U.S. officials said, to freeze Ukrainians into submission. And it seems that the winter is almost over, and Russia seems to be failing to achieve at least this goal, to freeze Ukrainians to submission. Does it give you some ground for optimism? And do you think that the darkest days are behind us?
Well, I certainly hope so. And it definitely gives me grounds for optimism. It makes, you know, looking at how Ukrainian people have had steel injected into their spines. I mean, they have spines of steel, and perhaps that makes us steel as well, our spines full of steel, to be able to support such courage and determination to not give up their territory, to not give up their nation. So I should say Russia's goal is not just to destroy, it's to take back, right? To take the land, to take the country. And, you know, we, the united members of this coalition, are not going to allow that to happen. And we want to support Ukraine in its territorial integrity. And the people have been so fierce in their determination to not allow their land to be taken.
The recently Canadian Chemical Corporation announced a major uranium deal with Ukraine's Energoatom that should meet Ukraine's nuclear fuel needs until 2035. How significant do you think this is, and is there was there any cooperation or coordination between the United States and Canada on this? I know you're talking about the, the transition to renewable energy, but right now Ukraine still has many nuclear.
For the immediate, yes. In the immediate, it's really important to get power, right? And clean power is very important. Ukraine has been a leader in nuclear energy. Obviously, Zaporizhzhia is the biggest nuclear power plant in all of Europe. Moving into the future, I think a lot of the Central and Eastern European countries are very interested in small modular reactors, next generation nuclear, as well as some of the bigger reactors as well. But they don't want to be under the thumb of Russian reactors or Russian uranium. And so this is I think the next generation of questions. We just saw an agreement with Poland, for example, to be able to have a series of 3 reactors that are built in partnership with Westinghouse. We've got to make sure that those reactors are fed, but not by Russian uranium.
You talked about resilience, about Ukrainian resilience, and there is one survey that was pretty striking to me. According to the survey conducted by the Munich Security Conference, 89% of Ukrainians or responders in Ukraine said that Ukraine will still or should continue to fight even in the event of a nuclear attack on a Ukrainian city. First, I'm wondering, what's your reaction to this kind of response by Ukrainian residents? And second, is the use of tactical weapons by Russia still a reason for concern?
Certainly, any saber rattling around nuclear is a reason for concern. I strongly believe that countries that have access to nuclear weapons understand the power and the horror of them. And one can only hope that, that Putin lives up to his word that he is not going to be deploying nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons or any other larger weapon. And that would be of enormous concern, not just to the United States, but to the entire world. I think it does speak volumes what you've said about Ukrainian resilience and their determination that in the face of anything, they want their homeland and they're entitled to their homeland and they're going to fight for their homeland no matter what. That is an amazing spirit. I wish we could see that kind of spirit of love of country all around the world. I mean, we really are hugely admiring of the Ukrainian people.
And I want to come back to something that you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, that Ukraine wants to change their power grid. And of course, war is a tremendous tragedy, but it also creates some opportunity to build better and to build something new. What do you think United States, how do you think United States can help Ukraine with reconstruction efforts and with efforts to actually build something better in energy sector with the new technology and to abandon the Soviet era?
No, we are very excited about the possibility of working with Ukraine. In fact, I've been working with Minister Halushenko, who is my counterpart in Ukraine, energy minister, who is very interested in working with our labs. For example, the National Renewable Energy Lab has been doing these roadmaps for countries that have expressed interest in going 100% renewable, for example, or 100% clean, zero carbon emitting. And we want to work with Ukraine on its desires to be able to do that, to provide technical roadmaps on how to get there. What's the best way if you incorporate all of the assets that Ukraine has? How much solar, how much wind, how much hydroelectric power, how much nuclear power? What's the mix that's good for Ukraine and lives up to what Ukraine wants? So we are very eager to partner on that future roadmap and on any assistance that we can to allow Ukraine to live up to its own ambition.
Given the current state of power grid, do you think Ukraine still have a potential
to
build?
Yes. I mean, the current power grid, I mean, to your point, if you're going to build back, let's build back in a way that allows you to be resilient and to have energy security. And energy security, of course, through clean, which is exactly what President Zelensky has said he wants to do. And so we stand totally ready, and we're working already on the plans that with Ukraine, that once this is over, that you can build that future for Ukraine and for Ukraine's economy as well, but mostly importantly for Ukraine's own security, to be energy independent.
Do you think in a year we'll be talking about the reconstruction and building something better?
Yes, I do. I do.
Secretary Granholm, thank you so much
Thank you.
for the interview.
I appreciate it. Thank you.